Hello everyone, welcome to the discussion on Java technical interview questions. In this webinar, we are going to discuss most frequently asked Java interview questions, and in the upcoming webinar, we are mainly going to concentrate the questions related to the core concepts of Java. Let me start this session. The first question, what is the difference between the hash include statement and the import statement? Whenever we need the predefined thing support, we generally type the include statement or the import statement. Most of us think both are same, but there is a huge concept behind these two statements. Let's come to the include statement. In C or C++, whenever we need any predefined thing support, we need to load the header files. Like for example, for scanf function and printf function, we need standard input output header file support. Like that, we need header files to do the predefined thing or operations. At the time of compilation, the preprocessor will recognize these statements, locate and load the content of the header files into the memory. Here, the memory is loading with the content at the compilation time itself. So this type of loading is called as static loading, and we can't do the partial loading of the header files. We should compulsory do the complete loading of the header files at the compilation time. For example, whenever I need the support of standard input output header file to do the printf operation, I cannot load the partial content of the header file. I should compulsory load the entire content of header file into the memory at the compilation time itself. Whereas in the import statement, whenever we need the predefined things in Java, we go for the packages. There is no concept called the header files. The compiler will recognize the import statement. If that package, if the specified package is not present and it is not a valid package, then it will raise the compile time error. If the specified package is valid, then JVM will take the responsibility to load the package content into the memory at runtime. Here the memory is loading at runtime, not at the compile time. So this type of memory loading, we can call it as dynamic loading, and here you will get a specialty. We can load the specified content. How much we want, then that much we can load into the memory. For example, from the util package, I doesn't want all the classes, I want only array list. Then you can take import java.util.arraylist. So specified content we can import, and this is the difference between the include and the import statement. Let's go for the second question. The second question is a very important question. It was asked in most of the Java interviews. Is the Java is platform independent? If so, justify your answer, right? Java allows its applications to compile over one platform and can run over multiple platforms. So such type of languages are called as platform independent languages. Java allows its applications to compile over one platform. It may be Windows, Linux, anything, and it allows its applications to run over multiple platforms. So that's why we can call Java as platform independent. Before going to discuss the internal reason, let me give why the C is not the platform independent. In C, when we compile the code, we will get an executable file. In the compilation phase, we are having many internal phases like syntax analysis, semantic analysis, intermediate code generation, parse tree generations, and code optimization. After all these phases, we will get assembly code, the executable code. The executable code itself contains the platform related content. So if I am compiling in Windows platform, the executable file will contain the content related to the Windows platform. So whenever I am going to run this executable file over another platform, it may be Linux or Unix, then the code will not work because the representations will differ from one platform to another platform. Linux representations are different, Windows representations are different. So that's why, due to the executable file, the C is called as a platform dependent language. Whenever I am using the same platform, it will work fine, but when I change the platform, it won't work. And coming to the Java, Here whenever I am compiling the .java file, I am getting the dot class file. It is not like an executable file. It is containing the bytecode called as intermediary code. And whenever I am running this dot class file over multiple platforms, it works fine. There will be no problem. And let me give the internal reason. See, here this is the .java file. Whenever I am doing the compilation, I am getting a dot class file. This dot class file contains a bytecode which is also called as a neutral intermediate code, and this is also a code which can't be understood by every platform. So whenever we are going to run over multiple platforms, we need the JVM. Internally there is a component called converter. The JVM converter will take the responsibility to convert the neutral bytecode, converts this neutral bytecode to the native bytecode, the machine understandable code. For example, if I am using Unix platform, I need to use Unix JVM, then it will convert the neutral bytecode into the Unix representation. Similarly for Windows, for Linux, etc. So due to the presence of converter in JVM, the Java language is said to be platform independent. And here we need to note a point. The Java language is platform independent, whereas the JVM is platform dependent, because to convert the neutral bytecode to the machine dependent code, we need to use a machine dependent JVM. For Linux, we need to use Linux JVM. For Unix, we need to use Unix JVM. For Windows, the Windows JVM. And let's go for the third question. Do Java support overloading? And this is also a tricky question. We often find that the plus symbol can be used as for arithmetic operation, arithmetic addition, and for the concatenation operator, and we may think that the operator overloading is possible in Java, but it is not absolutely true. Operator overloading is not at all possible in Java at programmer level. And how can we say that plus is called as operator overloaded operator? Because the Java itself supports some predefined overloaded operators, except those there is no job for the programmer to define the rules for the operator, because it reduces the code readability. It creates a confusion to the developer. For example, if an operator having 10 uses, you can use it in 10 ways, then the operator may get confused how to use in which situation. So the Java doesn't allow any confusion oriented concept. So Java doesn't support operator overloading. Let's look at the definition of overloading. Overloading is nothing but using an existed thing into multiple forms. For example, a person is an existed only unique thing. We can use them in many ways, like a student, as a son, as a friend. Based on the scenario, the role of the person is going to be changed. This is called as operator overloading. This is called overloading, and Java doesn't support overloading. Plus is the predefined Java overloaded operator. Let's go for the fourth question. How can we say Java is a robust language? We know that whenever the person asks about Java, we need to list out the features. We can say that Java is a simple, portable, robust, high performance, multi-threaded programming language. Then how can we say that a Java is a robust language? Means we can say a programming language is robust if it is good at two things, the memory management and the exception handling. Java is good at both memory management and exception handling. So that's why we call Java as a robust programming language. Let's look at the points which makes the Java a robust language. Good at memory management means heap memory management means whenever we need to create an object, it will be allocated memory in the heap memory, and due to good heap memory management, Java is good at memory management. And dynamic allocation, garbage collector is such a great concept that is used to destroy the unused things, which manages the memory very well. And let's look at the exception handling mechanisms. Java supports various exception handling mechanisms and for the smooth termination of our program, like using the try catch blocks or using throw and throws keywords. And this is all about the robust language. Let's go for the fifth question. Is Java supporting multiple inheritance? Java is not at all supporting multiple inheritance with classes because it leads to the ambiguity condition. You need to say, you need to give some explanation because interviewer will not accept one or two words answers. So you need to give a little bit of explanation. Let me give the explanation. Multiple inheritance is an ambiguity feature. So Java will not support that. Let me give here. I am taking a class A. It is having one variable integer I equal to 10 and a method called m1 is printing A. And let me take another class B. It is having an integer variable I equal to 20 and a method m1, it is printing B. Similarly, a class C, let the class C is extending from the two classes A and B. Whenever it is calling the super.I, it is in the ambiguity condition, whether this I refers to the value from class A or class B. There is an ambiguity condition here. And similarly, whenever it is invoking the method m1, it may from class A, superclass A or superclass B. There also we are getting the confusion. So in order to avoid such confusion oriented concepts, the Java extends keyword is designed in such a way that it won't allow more than one class. Here see, class C extends A comma B. It is not a valid thing. You need to extend only one class at a time. This is all about multiple inheritance. And let me go for the question 6. Why character type in Java is taking 2 bytes of memory? It is also one of the frequently asked Java question. See, in C and C++, whenever there is a char data type, it is taking 1 byte of memory. But whereas coming to the Java, it is taking 2 bytes. What is the internal thing happening? Means in C and C++, in order to represent the character, we are using the ASCII representation. But coming to Java, we are using Unicode representations. Unicode means it's a unique code for every character. What is the speciality for Unicode means? It supports the many natural languages, means internationalization. It provides support for many natural languages like Telugu, Tamil, Hindi, English, whatever it may be. Most of the natural language characters will be provided support in Java. That's why to represent that many characters, 1 byte of memory is not sufficient. We need to go for 2 bytes of memory. That's why we are taking 2 bytes for char type in Java. Let's go for the 7th question. Explain the main method syntax in Java. Whenever we see any Java program, we are strictly following a syntax for main method like public static void main string array. Is we need to follow this syntax strictly, or can we made any changes? Is there be any problem if we made changes to the main method? Means, let's look at the syntax of the main method. See, the JVM is designed in such a way that it always looks for the main method first. If I want to replace the main with another name, let it be public static void coding and bracket string array. I am using coding here instead of main method. There will be no problem, you can use, but you need to configure your own JVM. If we are using our own JVM, we can write any method as per our wish. But as per the standard JVM provided by the Sun Microsystems, we need to follow the main method only. And the main method always need to be public because the JVM need to call the main method. The program may be saved at any location in our program, in our system. So in order to call the main method, it needs to be public only. And why it always needs to be static means, at the time of execution, initially we are not creating any object or class. At the time of starting the application, at running the application, we need to call the main method. To call a method without having object, we should make the method as static only. Except that we can't access that method. That's why we need to put static keyword in the syntax of main method. And coming to the void return type, the return type of the main method should be void only because JVM is internally calling the main method, and after execution of main method, the main method doesn't have any responsibility and it doesn't need to return anything to the JVM. That's why we need to put the return type as void only, and the string array represents the command line arguments. This is all about main method syntax, and although it is a strict syntax we need to follow, and we can make some valid changes in the syntax, because Java doesn't give importance to the order of modifiers, so you can use the order of modifiers as per your wish. Instead of public static, you can use static public. See in example 2, I am using static public void main. This is also a valid syntax. And see, we are representing the command line arguments as a one-dimensional string array. For representing the one-dimensional string array, you can use any valid syntax, like as I given in the example 3, the brackets were placed after the array name. This is also a valid syntax. So by changing some valid things in the syntax, you can make changes. See, you can change the name of the argument. Instead of args, you can put array or arr. It is just like a name given to the array variable. These are the valid changes we can make to the main method. Let's go for the next question. What is the importance of variable length argument methods? The variable length argument methods are used for code readability and to reduce the code complexity. Let's see an example. See the left side, we are having 3 methods. Let the first method, I am using a 2 arguments method. I am passing the 2 arguments and the method is returning the sum of the 2 arguments. And the third method is taking 3 arguments and returning sum of 3 arguments. And fourth method is taking 4 arguments and returning the sum of 4 arguments. See, if I am changing the length of arguments and I need to write a special method for every change in the arguments list. This takes more time and more code to program this. It will be highly complex. For that, I am going to use variable length arguments. So there will be no problem while changing the length of arguments. You can take any length arguments, the logic will work fine and you will get the output. See, in this case, I am taking the 3 dots representing the variable length arguments. Means whatever the arguments, length of arguments I am passing, those will be converted into a one-dimensional array and the logic will be performed and we will get the output. See, first time I am calling the method with 2 arguments and then with 3 arguments and then with 4 arguments and 5 arguments. There will be no problem because I am using variable length arguments and I am maintaining only one method for that. So we can say that by using variable length arguments, we can reduce the code and the code readability will be improved. Let's go for 9th question. Here, what is the difference between the equality operator and the equals method? This is also a very tricky and confusing concept. Both are checking for equality, but there is some scenario differences for both of them. The equal to operator, double equal to, is used to check the equality of references, whereas the equals method will be used to check for the object content. Okay, let's see here. If I am using string s1 equal to high and string s2 equal to high, means I am creating 2 string objects, both having the same content high and both having different references s1 and s2. Whenever I am using s1 equal to s2, I am using double equal to here because I am checking the references. S1 is one reference, S2 is another reference. Whereas in the second system.out.println statement, see, S1 dot equals S2. Here the content will be compared. The high will be compared with high. Both are same, so I will get the true here. And let's go for the 10th question. What is the difference between new keyword and new instance? Both new keyword and new instance are used to create objects only, but the scenarios are different. Let's take an example. If I know the class name itself, in the beginning itself I know, then I will use new keyword. Just like class name, the object reference equal to new and the constructor I will going to call. There will be no problem if I know the class name at beginning itself. Let's take a case, if I doesn't know the class name, that to which class I am creating the object I doesn't know. But at the runtime I will pass the class name and I need the object of that class. To meet this scenario, the new keyword is not at all possible. We can't use this new keyword at this scenario. For that we need to go for new instance method. Let's look at this class student we are having, and this is a class example, and this is the main method. See, I will pass the class name student as a class name at runtime. You need to create the object at runtime. I doesn't know the class name at the beginning, so I go for new instance method. See, this is the syntax. Class dot for name of args of 0 means I am passing the class name to which I need an object. This will contain here args of 0, and new instance. This is the method I am going to invoke to create the object for the class I am going to pass as command line argument. And you need to remember one point here. Whenever I am creating the object using new keyword, if the specific class is not present, then we will get an error called no class definition found error. But whenever I am using new instance method, if the class is not present, then I will found class not found exception. There is a little difference in exceptions also. And this is all about the today's webinar, and we will discuss many more interview questions in the upcoming webinars. Thanks for your participation. Do follow in our YouTube and Telegram channels. Thank you.